Today's lesson is Under the Radar, the world's unseen environmental disaster. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And my name is Helen.
And today we're going to talk about sand. Sand, of course, is the stuff that gets stuck on your feet when you go to the beach and you have to figure out a way to wash it off. That's one reason I don't like to go to the beach. But sand has many uses, and especially it has uses in the construction industry. I didn't know that, but I guess sand is important when we build buildings and stuff. But hey, it seems like there's going to be a sand shortage pretty soon.
Yes, and this is creating an environmental disaster, and we'll read about why in a moment. So an environmental disaster. A disaster is something that's very bad. It's a bad event that happens and causes a lot of damage, or it kills a lot of people. We have natural disasters such as typhoons and floods and earthquakes. These are all events that can cause disasters that kill people and a lot of damage.
Indeed, and of course this problem is under the radar. We can't really see it unless somebody tells us about it. So let's find out what this is. Let's read the first part of our lesson now, and we'll be right back to discuss it.
Under the radar, the world's unseen environmental disaster. The next time you find yourself lounging at the beach, take a moment to wonder at the fact that you're lying on one of the most important building blocks of modern life, sand. A report released by the United Nations last year revealed that global demand for the material has ballooned to around 50 billion metric tons a year. That's 3 times the amount used just 2 decades ago.
大家好，标题中我们可以看到单字 radar。它是名词，指的是雷达。例如 As the ship's officer explained how sailors use radar, he played down its importance. 船上长官在说明船员该怎么运用雷达时，却对其重要性轻描淡写。或者 The Air Force's radar detected multiple enemy fighter jets approaching. 空军的雷达侦测到多架敌军战机接近。接着我们看到名词disaster 意思是灾难、灾祸或是祸患。举例来说 The disaster in the city was caused by a worker breaking a gas line. 这个城市的灾难起因于一名工人弄破了瓦斯管线。又或者说 The country's tourism industry is suffering as a result of the recent natural disasters. 该国的观光业因为近来的天灾而受害。再来我们看到动词 lounge 指的是慵懒或是舒适的闲躺、闲坐或是倚靠。例如 Jeff lounged in a hammock for most of his vacation. Jeff 假期的大部分时间都闲躺在吊床上。或是 Jill's cat likes nothing better than to lounge in the sun. Jill 的猫最喜欢在太阳底下懒懒的躺着。另外这个字也可以当作名词，意思是休息室或是包厢。举例来说 Singing at KTV lounges is a very popular activity. 在 KTV 包厢唱歌是一项非常受欢迎的活动。
So the title of today's lesson is Under the Radar, the world's unseen environmental disaster. The word radar here refers to a system that uses radio signals to find the position of something, like an airplane or a ship. So the military uses radars in its defense system against enemies. Now, the phrase under the radar means to remain unnoticed, or something can be kept under the radar on purpose. If you want to keep a low profile, meaning you don't want people to know that you are in a particular place or what you're doing, you can try to keep yourself under the radar or keep yourself from being noticed by other people.
Indeed. So radar, of course, came out in World War II, and it's using radio waves to detect enemy planes coming. But of course, if you fly low enough, then the radar cannot detect you and you can slip through. So when we say under the radar, we just say you're not being noticed. Nobody knows you're there. And yes, indeed, this is an unseen environmental disaster that we need to learn more about. And the next time you find yourself lounging at the beach, take a moment to wonder at the fact that you're lying on one of the most important building blocks of modern life, sand. Okay, a lot of people don't really know about this, but if you're at the beach, like Fulong or Kending or wherever, you could look at that sand and wonder, actually this sand is necessary in the construction industry. We need that sand to build all those apartment buildings that exist in so many numbers all over Taiwan.
Yes, and what are you doing at the beach? Well, you might be lounging at the beach. And to lounge means to lie down or to sit down or to lean against something in a very relaxed way, in a lazy way. So apart from lounging at the beach, you might be lounging on your sofa, having a nice tea and watching TV. In fact, we have also the word lounger, which refers to a piece of furniture, such as a sofa or something like a sofa that allows people to lounge on, and that's why it's called a lounger. So lounging just means sitting or lying down in a very relaxed way.
Indeed. So you might be lounging at the beach and you can wonder at the sand there because it's an important building block of modern life, or as it says here, it's one of the most important building blocks of modern life. And of course, it is sand. A building block, of course, is something that builds something. It can be literal, like sand as a kind of building block to make a building. But building blocks could be used in other situations, like learning English grammar, for example, is an important building block to becoming fluent in English. And this, of course, is an important building block in modern life. Again, it's sand. And a report released by the UN, the United Nations, last year revealed that global demand for the material, sand, has ballooned to around 50 billion metric tons a year. So here we've got the word balloon being used as a verb. A balloon is usually a colorful plastic thing that's filled with air that you give to your small child, and they're happy if they get a balloon. But here balloon is being used as a verb. It just means something increases in amount or size, probably exponentially, like 2 times, 4 times, 8 times larger. It just keeps getting larger and larger all the time.
Yes, and the demand for sand has ballooned to around 50 billion metric tons a year. That's 3 times the amount used just 2 decades ago. So only 20 years ago, the demand for sand was only around, I would say, 15, 18 billion metric tons a year. But now it's grown or expanded to 50 billion metric tons a year.
That's a lot of sand, and our beaches around the world cannot supply that demand forever. Eventually, we may run out of sand, and you'll find yourself getting a suntan on a bunch of sharp rocks somewhere. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the second part.
So, where does all that sand go? Huge quantities go into the concrete and asphalt that form our towns and cities, as well as projects adding land along coasts. Moreover, each screen you view and every window you gaze out of is made from melted sand. The material is even used to make the chips that run our cars, phones, computers, and most other electronic devices. If you can't imagine a world without any of these products, then you understand the massive role those tiny grains play.
第二部分我们看到单字 concrete， 它是名词，意思是混凝土或是水泥。举例来说 Richard will paint the concrete wall around his house this weekend. Richard 这周末会粉刷他家的混凝土墙。接着我们看到形容词 massive， 它的意思是巨大的、庞大的，像是 A massive crowd gathered to hear the new president's first speech. 一大群人聚集在一起聆听新总统的首次演讲。也可以说 A massive fire destroyed those buildings. 一场大火摧毁了那些建筑物。
And here we ask the question, so where does all that sand go? We need a lot of sand, but what do we actually use it for? Well, huge quantities go into the concrete and asphalt that form our towns and cities, as well as projects adding land along coasts. So one place where sand goes to is in concrete. Concrete is a hard substance that is made by mixing things like sand, small stones or pebbles, and water. And when you mix these things together, you make concrete. And concrete is used for buildings. You use concrete to make the floor or make the walls, external walls or internal walls of a building.
Exactly. And of course, concrete can be used to make sidewalks or pavements, as they call them in England, and other things like structures and buildings and things like that. And asphalt is usually used to make highways and streets and things like that. And sand is also used in projects which add land along coasts. So, yes, indeed, sometimes we have land reclamation or building land out into the sea. This happens in Hong Kong a lot. As the city expands, they keep expanding into the harbor there. So they have these land reclamation projects. And I guess you need a lot of sand for things like that.
Yes, and aside from construction, sand is used for other things. It says here, moreover, each screen you view and every window you gaze out of is made from melted sand. In other words, sand is used to make glass. Glass for windows, glass for screens, and without sand, we wouldn't have these things either.
Right, so you got to have that sand to be playing with your phone there, so don't take sand for granted. The material is even used to make the chips that run our cars, phones, computers, and most other electronic devices. Of course, we all know what chips are. There's an important manufacturing industry here in Taiwan for microchips or computer chips, and they're used in various devices now. We have more electronics in cars and our phones, of course, in our computers, and then other electronic devices as well, like your refrigerator. It, of course, is using those chips, and, of course, those chips need to have sand as part of their construction.
Yes, and can you imagine living in a world without concrete for buildings or asphalt for highways and roads or windows or computer chips? Well, if you can't imagine a world without any of these products, then you understand the massive role those tiny grains play. We refer to pieces of sand as grains. So grain is a measure word for very small pieces of things, such as sand, or also you can say a grain of salt or a grain of sugar.
Exactly. So, of course, you're going to understand the massive role those grains of sand play. If something's massive, it's really huge, it's gigantic, it's colossal. So, of course, sand plays a very, 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 very important role in construction and in the screens you use every day. So again, don't take sand for granted, and we do need to figure out ways to keep our sand supply coming so we don't run out of it in the future. Now let's move on now to the third and final part of our lesson for today. We will listen to it first and then we will discuss it.
However, we are currently ravaging our rivers and lakes and causing immense environmental damage to satisfy our ever-growing need for sand. Sourcing it from deserts might seem like the obvious solution, but desert grains are too smooth for most purposes. With a dwindling supply of usable sand available, experts fear a crisis is on the horizon.
最后第三部分，我们看到动词 ravage， 它的意思是大肆破坏、毁灭、蹂躏。我们可以说The storm ravaged the coast, and many homes were damaged. 暴风雨摧残那个海岸线，许多住家损毁。也可以说 Emergency services are working hard after the typhoon ravaged large parts of the country. 台风肆虐该国多处地区后，紧急救援服务忙个不停。
So we saw in the previous part just how important sand is for our daily lives, for the things that we have. However, we are currently ravaging our rivers and lakes and causing immense environmental damage to satisfy our ever-growing need for sand. The fact that we need sand so much is harming the environment. First of all, we are currently ravaging our rivers. To ravage means to destroy something or to damage it very badly. I could also say that the town was ravaged by the typhoon. So the typhoon ravaged the town or destroyed the town. Here, we are ravaging or destroying rivers because of our ever-growing need for sand.
Yep, of course, the construction industry is a multi-million-dollar industry with a lot of people employed, and we need to have these construction jobs. So you got to have that sand to use in construction, and you got to get it somewhere. If it's all gone at the beach, or if the beach is protected, then you need to get it someplace else. It looks like you can get the sand from rivers and from lakes, and when you do that, you dig up the sand and you ravage the land. You cause immense environmental damage. Something's immense when it's huge, massive, colossal, gigantic. So we're causing great damage to the environment. And we're doing this to satisfy our ever-growing need for sand and for construction and for screens and chips and other things.
Yes, and the word immense can also be used for figurative things. I could say that I spent an immense amount of time trying to figure out how to put together this piece of furniture.
Okay, so here in the next sentence it says sourcing it from deserts might seem like the obvious solution, but desert grains are too smooth for most purposes. So I'm pretty sure most of us, including myself, probably thought, sand? How could that be a problem? Just go to the Gobi Desert or just go to the Sahara Desert. There is more sand there than you could possibly use in 1,000 years. What's the problem? People are making a mountain out of a molehill here. We've just got plenty of sand all over the place, but there is one reality here. Desert sand is not suitable for these things. It's just too smooth. Okay, so sand that you get at the beach is kind of grainy, it's kind of sharp, and therefore it is useful in construction and for screens and chips and things like that. But hey, the sand in the desert is too smooth, or at least the grains of sand in the desert are just too smooth. You can't really use it in these various applications.
Yes, and we have the word source here. We usually hear this word being used as a noun, as being the origin of something. What is the source of his wealth? How is he so rich? What made him so rich? What is the origin of his wealth? But here, source is being used as a verb, and it means to get something, to get a product, such as a basic material, like some mineral, like gold or silver, from a particular place. We can also talk about sourcing particular types of food. Coffee, for instance, is often sourced in Ethiopia or Indonesia or countries that produce coffee beans.
Exactly. That's where you source the coffee beans. And with a dwindling supply of usable sand available, experts fear a crisis is on the horizon. So we're talking about a dwindling supply of sand. To dwindle means to get smaller and smaller all the time. In the past, people were saying that the supply of petroleum is dwindling. We're running out of it. We need to find other sources of energy. That may or may not be true, but indeed, resources can dwindle quite frequently. We run out of those resources, and we need to either stop using those resources or find substitutes.
Yes, and since the supply is becoming smaller and smaller, experts are fearful that a crisis is on the horizon. A crisis is a huge problem, and for a crisis to be on the horizon means that it's probably going to happen, or it will happen, in the near future. To be on the horizon means in the near future. I could also say that success is on the horizon, which means that success is going to come soon.
Absolutely. And of course, the horizon is that line you see in the distance on the surface of the earth. If you're by the ocean and you look out, you can see the horizon in the distance. And sometimes, of course, if you have a telescope or binoculars, you might even see ships sail past the horizon as they sail around the curvature of the earth. So, of course, if something's on the horizon, that means you can now see it. Maybe those ships were below the horizon before and you could not see them because the earth is round and you couldn't see them, but then they get closer and then they're on the horizon. Yeah, you can see it. It's getting closer. It's still far away. You know, it's still not quite close up to you yet, but it's still getting closer and it could be very alarming. We need to be aware of that. And I think there's also the problem of people stealing sand. I think I've heard some news reports of countries stealing sand from neighboring countries so they can use it for their own purposes, and that sounds like a very naughty thing to do. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Let's listen now to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。这篇文章的标题是 Under the Radar, the world's unseen environmental disaster. 我们先看到 radar 就是雷达，那么 under the radar 是指说在雷达范围内但侦测不到，表示悄悄进行的，低调的，不受注意的。好，那么常见搭配用语有 fly under the radar， 这个字面意思是从雷达底下飞过，引申表达就是被忽略，没受到注意的意思。还有呢，如果我们说 stay under the radar， 则表示低调，不出风头。举例来说 She tries to stay under the radar at school。他在学校设法保持低调，尽量不出风头。好，那补充一下，如果是 on somebody's radar， 在某人的雷达上，那也就是指说受到某人持续关注的意思。那相反用法就是 off somebody's radar。例如 The singer has been on my radar since she released her first single. 从那位歌手发行第一张单曲时，我就注意到她了。好，另外在标题里面呢，它用到一个单字是 disaster， 它是指灾祸啊、灾难、祸患。那我们来学它的字首字根。好，在古希腊文里面astron 这表示复数的星星 the stars， 那么 aster 表示单数的星星 a star， 所以我们会发现呢，带有 astro 或是 aster 这两个字根的字呢，会跟星星天体有关。好，那在我们这个单字 disaster 当中，它的字首 dis 表示分离、否定，那么字根 aster 表示星星。好，那以前占星学家认为天有异象时啊，人间必有灾难，那么 disaster 就是源自于这个说法，表示灾难、灾祸。那顺便补充几个有这一类字根的单字，第一个是astrology， 它的字根 astro 表示星星，那么字尾 logy 表示学说，跟星星有关的学说，应该可以联想到 astrology 是指占星学、占星术。我们如果把这个字尾 logy 把它改成 nomy 表示学科，那跟星星有关的学科应该可以想到 astronomy 就是指天文学咯。好，第二个补充的是 astronaut， 它的字根 astro 表示星星， naut 表示水手。同学们可以试着联想，太空人就像是坐着太空船的水手，在宇宙中航行冒险，那么 astronaut 就是太空人咯。好，那我们最后再补充一个单字是 constellation， 它的字根这个 stella 也是指星星，因为在拉丁文里面 stella stella 就是 star 星星。好，那再来它前面有个字首 con 表示一起，后面的 tion 则是名词字尾，所以 constellation 我们就可以用这种很多星星聚集在一起去联想到这个单字它有星座、星群、星秀的意思。好，那么以上的今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Radar. By flying low, the small airplane was able to avoid being detected by radar. Disaster. The new virus resulted in a major public health disaster. Lounge. The lizard was lounging on a rock in the sun. Concrete. The giant dam was built using millions of tons of concrete. Massive. The famous actor was paid a massive amount of money to play the role. Immense. The media's interest in the politician's trial was immense.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Helen.
I am Roger.
See you next time.